Hey family, it's Tasha Marver Prepping. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. You already know what time it is, baby. Get your drink, pull up. Let's talk about it. Today I want to talk about, so I mentioned rationing the other day in my video. Might have been yesterday's video. Had somebody ask me about rationing, how you go about rationing plan. I believe I've done this video before about how to go about figuring out your ration plans. I'll try to find that and put that in the description box below so you can get both videos done and watched, and hopefully get something from both of the videos, that one and today's video. So today I'm just going to kind of go over just some basics, things to think about when we think about, wow, what it would look like if you had to ration food, ration things in your home. You know, we always see this kind of on movies like, oh, something bad happens. Oh, we got a ration. And they just immediately, it's just something they just immediately magically start doing. And they just immediately know right away how much food they have left. We're rationing. We've got 20 days left, right? And the honest truth is that the average person is not thinking about rationing food, is not thinking about if they had to cut back, is not even going to know how to begin to calculate how to figure that out and know, okay, if we ration, we have 20 days worth of food, right? And the more people you have around you, the harder that gets, and the quicker you can't do that. I'm not saying that people can't figure it out with math, right? But when you're talking about meals that you're trying to make and ingredients and the amount of ingredients it takes to make something, and if you haven't really, either you're not the cook or you haven't even really done that, it's not the easiest, okay? Excuse me. So some things to think about is calculations, right? Just alluded to that, and that is taking your meals, your basic meals that you make for you and your family, and calculating, hey, a basic meal, how many servings are out of that? Because again, too, I don't know about you, but a lot of times I overcook. I do a lot of one pot meals, one sheet meals, crock pot meals, right? Where I just make a meal and you just take a recipe. And of course, yes, recipes will say, hey, it makes enough for 4, makes enough for 6, whatever, right? But I make these big pot meals, right? And we're never measuring it out to see how long it lasts. Sometimes there's leftovers, sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's enough leftovers for 2 days later, right? And so calculating your guys' favorite meals. What are the meals you'd be making during SHTF? How much does it feed you guys in your basic recipe that you make, right? Is it enough to serve you guys 2 times over, 3 times over, or is there just enough for a meal? And then once you have those calculations, you should start cooking to that. So basically, a thing that I'm constantly working on is these big pot meals that I make where I end up having 2 or 3 days worth of leftovers. It's going to be difficult, possibly with no power, to keep those good. And so for me, trying to make a conscious effort to make smaller meals, right? And then when you think about those meals that you have, right? That menu, you think about, okay, how would you half it, or how would you whatever, right? What does it mean to ration? And rationing, you know, is not as easy as just, oh, well, we're just going to half it. It's fine. It's easy, but it depends, you know, who is doing work in the group, who is still being physically active in and around your property, moving stuff, doing projects, working on something, even like watching and having watches where you're watching to see, to keep things safe. I mean, that stuff, and patrolling, that stuff takes energy. And so you have to think about that when you're figuring out rations, because in some situations, somebody might be entitled to getting a little bit more than the other people if they are being way more active. Because again, just because SHTF happens, there's still things that have to happen, especially if you're already homesteading and trying to live on your own. Those chores don't stop just because the world stopped, right? Animals still have to be fed, you know, rotations, all the things still have to be done. Yes, is there some few things will fall off? Yes. But if anything, they'll be quickly replaced by other things. So calculating out things matter. Another thing to think about is bulk items. When I think about rationing, I think about easy meals. I think about I think about rice, beans, or pasta, and you add a can of some sort of meat and a can of some sort of vegetable, and boom, you've got a meal. And so it's much easier to do those calculations we just talked about when you're dealing with bulk items, when you're dealing with, okay, I'm going to get enough rice for a year for my family for regular rice meals, right? And then you can do an easy calculation if you know already how many meals worth of rice you have for your family on a regular rotation. You're good, but then it's easy to do the math depending on the ration that you're going to do, whatever you guys are going to cut it back, right? And then you're good, right? It's just much easier if you've thought and you have bulk meals planned out, opposed to you just have a bunch of food stockpile. Some stuff is for onesie twosie people to, to eat, can of soup, right? How are you quickly determining, rationing and, how many people are going to eat that can of soup, right? And so it's hard to figure out exactly how much food you have left when you have never looked at it, never calculated, and you have a bunch of onesie twosies, certain packages, and you don't really, you've never really looked at it in a sense of bulk stuff. Another thing to think about is prep the meals, right? Just for example, let's say we do a freeze-dried meal we put together in a jar. What does that look like if you half that, put it in a smaller glass? So same meal plan, but putting stuff and preserving stuff in smaller jars, let's say, for example. Or freeze-dried, you have stuff that's vac sealed, and having smaller portions that are vac sealed, so that you're not having to open, food, additional food that's not needed, right? And it's already been kind of divvied out, like, hey, these are ration sizes. These are smaller sizes that are 100%, meant for rationing and falling back on our food, okay? Another thing that you could do now is practice fasting. That's a really, really good one, because if you are already your body is kind of used to intermittent fasting, a lot of people now are changing their diets as far as health and stuff and going down to 2 meals a day. I know some people that are on 1 meal a day. So changing how you think about your family and how you eat food when it comes to, 3 meals and 2 snacks and all this stuff, right? But thinking about what that looks like. Maybe you have that now, but a rationing plan for you and your family is cutting back a whole meal, right? Cutting back a whole meal out of that, right? And you're not really changing the amounts of food, but you're taking out a meal completely, right? And so you're not really rationing those other 2 times. You're not really rationing it down. They're getting the same serving, but you're taking out a meal. Or you're figuring out a fasting intermission where you're able to figure out a time period where you guys are not eating at all, and therefore that is saving you some food. Another thing is obviously prepping your menu. So if you have those meals, again, if you're like, okay, I could just half this recipe, and then that's what we would eat in a rationing situation. But again, not everything's not that easy. But if you do that prep ahead of time, it will save you time, and you won't be so stressed out trying to figure it out on the fly. And then the other thing is, when you think about rationing food, I think about, okay, if we're rationing, that means it's a dangerous time. That means people are starving, people are looking for food. And so there's a heightened sense of protecting your food, security, right? So thinking about that, looking at that, thinking about how you would hide food, keep food, not making it easy to be seen or found from other people that are looking for food. I mean, even friends and family are maybe not going to be able to be trusted because they're going to be starving. And I'm not saying don't share, but I'm saying that you need to have a game plan on how you're going to protect that food, because it's going to be a heightened sense. Crime is going to go up. People are going to be looking for food, be desperate for looking for food. And so here you are trying to ration, but you need to protect those stores, protect that food, so that it doesn't get taken from you, okay? So these are the things I think about when we think about rationing. I know you guys are smart. You guys have all types of ideas, different things that you guys have implemented yourself. It's like anything else with an emergency plan. It's a rationing plan. If you think about it early, you think it through, you think about what you would do, what it looks like for you and your family, then in the moment when you actually have to do it, you're not freaking out. You kind of know some math already, right? Some calculations already, kind of know where you stand with how much food you have. If you're doing organization and inventory now to figure out how much food you have, right? We've talked about this before, figuring out how close you are to starvation. How ready are you and your family? If you are doing those calculations now as far as how much food you guys have, and then you figure out what a ration plan looks like for you guys, and then implement it, and then figure out now, okay, we have a year's worth of food, but if we rationed, we actually have 3 years of food or 2 years of food, whatever, okay? It depends on what your plan looks like. Depends on what type of food you keep. Bulk food, same food. I mean, we joke, hubby jokes all the time about if he had a bowl of rice and, a fried egg on it, with a little bit of soy sauce, let's say, he'd be good to go, right? And eating that every day. Obviously, we have food to make the variation a little bit different than that being that every day. But my point is, if you have certain foods that you love, that you in a starving situation would absolutely love to have every day in your meal, right? Then you're on the right track, okay? And then you stockpile that stuff, stockpile bulk stuff, okay? It really does matter, and it's an easy way to get a calculation going and then build upon that, okay? So you guys let me know your guys' thoughts. I hope you guys are well. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next week on the next video. Take care.